Week 10 of the NFL came and went. I'm sorry if this looks a little bit different. I'm playing around with green screen and things like that to make things a little bit better. But I'll go over the 3 games that I selected as my picks for, or picks and predictions for week 10. And we'll go through those games. And just a little bit of a spoiler here. I was 3 for 3 week 10. Great week for me. I am now in the winning column. I am 8-7, I think it is, for the season. On the season, so I'm just getting a little bit better and better as weeks go on. Obviously, not all weeks are going to be 100%, record here, but this was a great week in terms of prediction. So, very first pick that I had was the Lions -7.5 at the Commanders for -115 odds. And basically, how I predicted the game will go, it went. I said the Lions will be able to run the ball and have a great offensive game. That was regardless if Dan Campbell or John Morton called the game. I believe that's only because the Commanders' defense is not good. They're not good at all, especially not good against the run. And the Lions having Gibbs and Montgomery, that duo, I mean, that's going to be hard for the Commanders to do. The Commanders were able to move the ball a little bit sometimes with Marcus Mariota. So we'll see how Detroit kind of game plans around future games on their defense. The defense, of course, is their main key weakness here. The secondary, I believe. I know they've been focusing on pass rush, but mainly because the better pass rush you have, the more it's going to help your secondary. So it's kind of like a little bit of a waterfall effect here. But in terms of the game itself, the Lions showed great prowess. They executed perfectly pretty much on offense, or a little bit of shaking moments on special teams. Jake Bates had to make a tackle on a kick return that was not good. So there's still some things that the Lions have to clean up, especially on the special team side. You cannot allow those big games on special teams in big moments and in big games and have that not amount to something in terms of the final scoreboard. The Commanders, on the other hand, unfortunate that Jaden Daniels was not able to play. Marcus Mariota was in there as a backup. He did decently enough. No picks, threw 2 TDs and 213 yards. Given that they had this uphill battle to climb in terms of score, the Lions were just, engines roaring on offense. The Commanders had to throw. And that is something I did say is because the Lions offense was going to be such... put a lot of points on the board, the Commanders were going to have to follow suit and be aggressive as well in the throwing. The Lions defense did good enough. They kept the Commanders at bay, and the Lions won this and got over that 7.5 spread. Exactly how I predicted, actually, and that is how the Lions should look going forward. Now, what's next for the Lions going forward is biggest question is the offense. Can the offense stay stable? I know Dan Campbell seems like he's going to be calling the play calls going on or continuing on. We'll see how that goes. I expect John Morton to come back before the end of the season. So we'll see how that goes. This was a great game for the Lions to experiment on the offensive side and play calling, and things went great. We'll see how they do against defenses that are able to cause pressure and disrupt things on offense. The Commanders were not able to do that because of their defense. We'll see how they do against teams like Philadelphia. I think that is the real test going forward, and seeing if the Lions are just a playoff team or if they can potentially be contenders for not only the NFC, but the Super Bowl. That is the main question that the Lions have on offense. On defense, the main question is, can the defense hold up against these better teams? Shepard, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, is doing an incredible job so far this season. He is going to be key and critical to these key games and playoff games against the Packers, Eagles, and then whoever they get in the playoffs, because it's going to be a game-by-game basis, game plan-by-game plan basis. They don't have the superstars that some other teams have on the secondary. There's Aiden Hutchinson, pass rush. We have names like Brian Branch as well, safety. But some of the pieces around the perimeter are not as elite as other teams. So those are some more game planning you have to do as a defensive coordinator to really tackle those key games. So we'll see how the Lions do going forward in this key games to see if on the defensive side, can they hold up against some of the better offenses in the league. And the Lions do have some tough games ahead. Let me pull up their schedule real quick, but I know they had the Eagles. Of course, they have the Packers again. The Bears are not going to be easy. They have gotten better over the course of time. They also have the Rams, which is potential number 1 seed on the NFC. So the Lions here have a great chance to win the division. It really comes down to that Packers game, I believe. The Bears game they should win, and they should win against the Vikings. I know they lost last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, to the Vikings, but it doesn't matter because if they play that game against the Vikings 100 times again, they would win 100 times again. That's how confident I am in the Lions beating the Vikings, at least the second time around. Pivoting over to Washington. Washington, I'm sorry, but your season is over. You're not going to make the playoffs, and honestly, it's a little bit frustrating for Washington, but hear me out on this question that I am about to ask. Do you need, as a organization, Washington to pivot toward a new franchise quarterback? I'm not saying because Jaden Daniels is bad or he's playing bad. I'm saying only because the best thing you could do for your team as a quarterback, as a franchise player, is be available in those games. If you're hurt a lot of the times, and sometimes it's not, in your control, a lot of injuries are just unfortunate and things like that. Do they need to draft someone or trade for someone that's a lot more durable, a lot bigger and bulkier, that could withstand a lot of those tackles, a lot of those big hits, to be able to consistently over the course of the season stay in the rotation, be available for big plays, and not get knocked out or taking out of the equation in games or in stretches of the season? I think that's the biggest question here for Jaden Daniels. It's not his ability. It's not what he's able to do on the football field itself. It's how his physical stature, his leaner build is able to withstand some of just the nature of football itself. So that's going to be a key question for Washington. And I don't know if it's a little bit early or if this is a misguided question, but you need to figure out if Jaden Daniels is going to be your franchise QB going forward. I know the potential's there, but again, is he going to be available going forward? We'll see. And also on Washington, just figuring out the rest of the season. You're not going to make the playoffs, so the main thing you're going to have to do is figure out your offense, figure out your identity on offense, what you want to be, what you want to do, and build on that in the offseason and the draft for next season to make a push for the playoffs. All right, next game that I successfully predicted was Ravens at -3.5 against the Vikings, or at the Vikings, for -115 odds. I got that. I think the Ravens, if I remember correctly, won by 8 points. This was a game that I looked at the spread and I just didn't understand the spread at all, because the Ravens, kind of a little bit similar to the Lions, once the Ravens offense gets going, the other team is going to have to at least match their aggressiveness and put points on the board at the same rate that the Ravens are to have a chance in the game. So I saw Ravens at Vikings, kind of a similar situation to the Lions at the Vikings. The main difference here in this game is that the Ravens didn't have a lot of turnovers. The Ravens were able to make things on offense, and Lamar Jackson, of course, is a much different quarterback than Jared Goff. Lamar is able to handle a little bit more of the pass rush better, even though the Ravens O-line looked absolutely awful in that game. The Vikings, on the other hand, their main question coming in was J.J. McCarthy and how he would look in this game, and how is he your franchise quarterback going forward? That question is still TBD, to be determined, but it did look a lot better in this game than it did against the Lions. That's all I'll say. Some key things to note from this game is that the Ravens were not able to adjust to the Vikings defensive line, at least initially. They kind of adjusted by calling quicker throws, more screens, more quick throws to just get the ball out into their playmakers' hands, tight ends, Zay Flowers, wide receivers, and sometimes even running designated runs with Lamar Jackson, which I am not a fan of. That might be an unpopular opinion, but I am not a fan of the Lamar Jackson designated runs. That's not because it's successful, don't get me wrong, but I just don't like that Lamar Jackson came back from an injury and they're running so many designated runs. The only reason why they're running that many is because they need an extra blocker for the run, because they're not running the ball well. You have Derrick Henry, big bulky guy going through, but he's not getting a lot of yards because the rush blocking is not effective. So they just need another blocker, that running back, to block for Lamar Jackson, that one extra block, one extra person to at least get a few more yards and get things going and chugging along on offense on those designated runs. So Lamar Jackson, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch playing the game of football. He's incredibly talented and very fun to watch, and what he's able to do in the pocket and escaping pressure and things like that. But it's almost a crime what the Ravens are able to um, get past or get through or really put on the field in terms of this offensive line. If you didn't have Lamar Jackson, you would not have the ability to win this division. That's all I'm saying, because that Ravens O-line is absolutely awful, and I'm very surprised that year after year they haven't really done much to bolster that O-line, which, just imagine Lamar Jackson with a above average stable O-line, what he's able to do sitting in that pocket. And I don't know. I mean, that's just my wish as watching the Ravens, is I wish they had an elite O-line, but we'll see going forward what they do. The Vikings actually kind of lost this game by themselves. It's kind of weird to say, as I was just praising the Ravens and being able to do things offensively. But the Vikings had a lot of penalties, a lot of false starts that kind of killed their drives. And sometimes JJ McCarthy overthrew shots or was a little bit hesitant in throwing open throws that if it was any other quarterback that was a little bit more comfortable in that position, this would have been a lot more of a closer game than what I thought initially. And it would have been closer to that spread that we saw Vegas say about the game, like that 3.5 spread. So it's a little bit interesting how the Vikings almost beat themselves in this game. And the Ravens just ran away with it really at the end. So what's next for both of these teams? The Vikings, your big number one question is JJ McCarthy. Continue developing him. I don't know why people were digging at JJ McCarthy in this game. Yes, he needed to do things better, but I'm looking a little bit more oh my God, I can't speak. I'm looking at things a little bit better on the Vikings side in terms of the quarterback. Beginning of the game, the scripted plays, JJ looked pretty great. He was making great throws. There was one, I think, fade across a field that he made an incredible throw at for a big gain for a first down. And we see that the potential there, the confidence is there. But as the game goes on, as mistakes continue to build on the Vikings offensive side, it looks like JJ gets emotional and gets a little bit angsty, a little bit nervous. I don't know if nervous is the right word, but he doesn't trust himself as the game goes on, as you see the scoreboard and that point differential kind of build as the game goes on against the Ravens. You saw that the confidence, and it looked like he was just trying to rush things from his side. He really wanted like a big play. He wanted something to click. So sometimes he was throwing very contested throws to Justin Jefferson, trying to get that big down when he was double covered or triple covered, when someone a little bit closer to him was completely open and would have gotten some decent chunks or decent yards, just get first downs. So that's a little bit something that Kevin O'Connell and JJ can work on, and I see like some sunshine ahead, if that makes sense, for the Vikings. Do I think that means they have a chance at the playoffs? My answer to that is no, unfortunately, for the Vikings. The reason for that is, let's look at the standings for the NFC. So we have, and I'm going to list out these names that are currently the top 7 seeds in the NFC, and tell me if you think any of these teams would be ones that would potentially drop out of playoff contention. So we have the Eagles, They're not. They're winning their division. The Seahawks potentially winning their division, for sure making the playoffs. The Lions for sure making the playoffs, at least in my mind. And they're not going to lose to the Vikings again. You may argue with me on that as a Vikings fan, but we'll see again when they play again. The Bucks, they're most likely going to win their division, and they're going to make the playoffs. The Rams, again, might win their division, depends on their game with the Seahawks. For sure going to make the playoffs. We have the Bears. They've been getting progressively and progressively better. That is one team that you might say, oh, look, as a Vikings fan, that might be a team that dips down within the division. You just have to win those games against the Bears. We'll see how they do. This is the next game that's coming up, and it is a big critical game in terms of the division, in terms of playoff chances. So, at least in my opinion, the Bears are better than the Vikings. But let's just say, for sake of argument, the Bears, that's one team that could potentially fall out of playoff contention. Okay, fine. 7th seed right now, the Packers, let's be real, they're not going to miss the playoffs. They're not going to lose to the Vikings. Their defense is too good for that. And then we get to some fringe teams. So you got the 49ers. The 49ers is someone that is a team that could potentially upset some of the teams that are going to want to make the playoffs and maybe slide in at the last second. I just don't see a path for the Vikings, especially in that division, that tough division. You got the Lions, you got the Packers, and you got the Rising Bears. It's going to be very, very tough to win some of those games in that tough division. So I just don't see realistically a path for the Vikings to get there. All right, on the Ravens side, the Ravens, this is all about game to game, one game at a time, because you are looking at that division and you want to beat the Steelers and you want to win the division once again. So the Ravens, at least for me, a little bit longer term, but you need to address that O-line. You cannot count on Lamar Jackson day in and day out to bail you out as an offense. He is an incredible talent, but that is not sustainable, especially if you want a run in the playoffs. And also, I do not like the amount of Lamar designed runs that they are running. I want a healthy Lamar Jackson for the playoffs. That's all I want. I want a healthy Lamar Jackson. Stop running those. Do something else on O-line. Work on your running, your rush blocking on the offensive line as a team. And because you have Derrick Henry, you shouldn't need to run so many designed runs with Lamar Jackson. You have Derrick Henry in the backfield. Use him. Make your O-line better on running, on the rush. Please. That's all I'm saying. All right. I think that's enough for the Ravens at the Vikings. All right. And the third game, I chose a upset. The Eagles were underdogs against the Packers. I just chose the Eagles straight up at plus 110 odds against the Packers. I do not understand why people did not like this game. I think this was one of the best games of the season, and I'm not lying. I know it's an offensive league, and we want to see offenses, put points on the board, but at the same time, I'm a guy where I look at great defenses, and this was a great defensive game. Very physical. People were flocking to the ball. It was great to see. I just don't understand why people didn't like this game. It was a great game. Some of the suspense in this game was who is the offense, or what team is going to be able to crack the other defenses first or find that chip in the armor. And we saw a little bit of that with the Eagles. Of course, the fumble by Jordan Love, I believe, led to a field goal. So that ultimately decided the game. So turnovers here. And then also just smart plays at critical moments. We saw a great throw by Jalen Hurts, a little bit underthrown, but great critical play by Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith for that touchdown that got them ultimately 10-7 at the end of the game. A line of scrimmage battle, very physical. It was a great game. It was a preview of a potential NFC Championship game. Do I think these teams would meet in the NFC Championship? No, I don't think so. I have more questions about the Packers than I do about the Eagles. It was a dirty game. It didn't look the best offensively for these teams, but the defenses on both sides did incredible jobs. They game planned really well. No team was able to get the run going. So that meant, and great coverage by the secondary for both teams. Most of the time, there were very, very few instances where there were just wide open receivers downfield or just in general to get easy passes. It was an incredible game, in my opinion. And this is in my mind, just because this game's got so much heat, for whatever reason, this is going to be one of the most underrated games of the season. I mean, this was two elite teams going against each other. Very important for the NFC seeding as well. Potentially, this game could potentially decide the number one seed in the NFC. I just thought it was a great game. I don't know. I might be in the minority here. It was awesome. And both teams were playing like they were in the conference championship game. I mean, this was playoff level at the very minimum play by both teams. Yeah, on offense, things weren't clicking for both teams, but that's just because the defensive play was incredible. All right, what's next for the Eagles? The Eagles, rest of the season is honestly quite easy. They won the division, not confirmed or not officially as of yet, but let's be real. The Eagles won the division. My main question for the Eagles going forward is, how are you going to combat tough defenses like you saw with the Packers? They need a better game plan, better cohesion on the offense to get through those tough times and call up or dial up better plays or better critical plays to make those big plays or critical plays happen or occur, or things get clicking for the Eagles offense in critical games, playoffs, potential championships. We'll see. And the Eagles actually have a easier remaining schedule as well. So this might hurt the Eagles. I think they are best geared up or best set up to win the number one seed in the NFC. So they're going to play after that bye for the playoffs is my kind of outlook, in my opinion. But I don't know if having an easier remaining schedule is going to help or hinder the Eagles. I know some of their wins and some of the schedule they went through now and the wins they have were against fantastic teams. I don't know if they want to have an easier schedule toward the end of the season, because sometimes teams get a little bit lazier, for lack of a better term, and they don't have those kind of grittier teams or grittier games that really prepare you toward the end of the season for kind of a playoff run, or those tough games in the playoffs. So we'll see for the Eagles. I do have high hopes for them in the playoffs. The roster is stacked, obviously. I think they have, for the most part, things buttoned up on the defensive and the offensive side as well. We'll also see how the Eagles continue on the defensive side. They got a few additions at the trade deadline, so I expect things to look only better from there. So main thing for the Eagles, stay healthy and work on your offense to dial up better plays, key plays in those critical moments. On the Packers, this one is a little bit different and it's a little bit tougher for the Packers. You're going to have to go a little bit game by game, but more have your eyes and your sights set on the division first. You have another game against the Lions. You have two games, I believe, against the Bears as well. The Bears that are rising. The Vikings, you already know my opinion. They should beat them pretty easily. But it's a little bit similar to what I said about the Eagles, about the Packers. You got to get things going on the offensive side. The Packers have a great defense. Sometimes it depends on the game, depends on the players, and depends on how things are going. But there can be moments where the defense lays off a little bit. But if you're able to get a consistent offense toward the end of the season and just build upon that into the playoffs, you can make a great run and great things happen in the playoffs. That's just a big question here is, can you get your offense clicking? They've had a few tough moments in the season. The Packers have, they lost to Carolina, I believe it was, but that is the number one thing. Keep your eyes on the division and work through that offense and get things going. I do have confidence just because of the talent and because of the coaches there that they'll be able to get things in a better state by the end of the season and by the playoffs. But we'll see how things turn out in terms of seeding and things like that in the division. But for sure, I believe the Packers are going to make the playoffs. All right, so those were 3 games that I watched and that I picked and predicted in week 10. What do you think about all of this? I discussed a lot in all 6 teams, but let me know what you think, and I'll see you for my week 11 predictions.